Hey there. I've got another old fiber scale Victorinox Officer's knife to show you. This is another knife that I have refurbished and repaired for Dave Arnold's collection. This is an 83 millimeter knife. It's very similar to one that I just recently featured on the channel doing a before and after video. But while that was a Type 1909 with the 3 visible pins, this is a Type 1903 with 4 visible pins. So back in 1903, they still had 4 pins, like the model 1897, but they introduced an optional shield. So here, this one does have the thinner optional shield. And so we can date this knife between 1903 and 1909 when they went to 3 pins. And I don't know if I said this or not, but this is an 83 millimeter model. It's kind of a basic model. Let's call it like a tourist. One really interesting thing I want to show you about this knife is the tang stamp. You'll notice the tang stamp says Haler Zurich. Nowhere on this knife does it say Elsener Swiss or Victoria or Army Swiss, some of the Victorinox tang stamps you would see from that era. This is not unusual. It's hard to believe, but back in the day, Victorinox, needed some help with marketing and distribution, so they'd often let retailers kind of put a private label tang stamp on their knives. And so Haler obviously was a big knife shop or knife retailer in Zurich. Later you see that kind of similarly with Hofritz and Fischer. So this is a carbon steel knife. So I've cleaned the blades up quite a bit, put a good luster on them, and a good fresh edge on them. There are some, carbon stains that just can't be removed. That's the main blade. Let's take a look at the small blade while we're at it. One nice thing about this knife is that for its age, I've oiled this knife, so it's a little messy, but I wanted to take it easy on the action, which is quite good, by the way. It's a great thing about these old Victorinox is if they're taken care of, they operate like the day they were made. And this knife is over 100 years old. So again, this knife's been polished and sharpened. But the great thing about this knife is that these blades are full. They've not been wasted away by years of sharpening. So this is a great example of this knife. So this knife would of course have the old style can opener. And when you take a look at the screwdriver, you're going to see no cap lifter. The back tools does have a 5-turn non-groove corkscrew. It's interesting, way back when they didn't have that decorative groove. Brass liners. And there's that old style awl. Knife has good action to it. Here it is up against my 91 millimeter 4-pin Type 1903 officer's knife. And so you can see the size difference. This is also a 3-layer knife with a saw, so it's going to be much thicker. And again, typically back then they had brass liners. Mine, however, does not. They didn't all have brass liners. This one has nickel silver liners. So just a good look side by side. That's pretty cool, I think. That's just some eye candy. Those are 2 really rare old Victorinox knives together there. So it's kind of cool to see them in one place at one time. So I mentioned that I not only refurbished this knife, but I repaired it as well. Let me show you those repairs. If you look very carefully, you can see that along the backs of the scales here, I've repaired some cracks. That's so typical in these knives that they'll crack all the way through the rivet there, and typically the piece will be missing. In this case, they were almost cracked all the way through, but the pieces were there, so we had something to work with. And I'll just tell you that that is a solid color epoxy putty that's hard as a rock, has great adhesion. There's no paint involved, there's nothing to rub off, solid color through and through, and it's almost a perfect match to these brown fiber scales. I've shared just about everything I've ever done on this channel. However, I'm not quite ready to share how I make that. I've worked real hard at it, and I'm looking forward to using it on a lot of old officers' knives and old soldier knives with the fiber scales. So there's a lot of things I can do then to repair these. Okay, well that's been a look at a vintage Victorinox Officer's model, type 1903, an 83 millimeter tourist-like model. It's well over 100 years old. It's now in great shape. It's got a very interesting tang stamp from a retailer in Zurich. I want to thank the owner for letting me have a shot at cleaning it and repairing it. And I want to thank you for watching. And as always, have fun collecting.